Jeff Slauson here from 19 News Now at the 19 News digital desk. In the world of respiratory viruses, RSV, for those that are unfamiliar, is a fairly intense and harmful respiratory virus that typically affects, at least for the most part, children and infants. And now it looks like for the first time ever, we have somewhat of a cure or help for this, and that coming in the form of a vaccine. So just approved by the FDA, this would be used for pregnant women between 32 and 36 weeks. And what they saw in this vaccine is that it helped to prevent RSV in children between birth and 6 months by like 70%. A really, really great number. We spoke with Dr. Amy Edwards, who is our expert in a lot of these types of diseases, about this yesterday. She was able to break down exactly why this is so important, and you can also just kind of feel the excitement that she has, because she's someone who sees thousands of sick kids in her hospital rooms every single year when we start to see the uptick in November, and is definitely looking forward to this working. Dr. Edwards, I think we spoke last year about RSV when cases started to rise here, and you said that on the horizon there was the potential for this first vaccine. It's now happened. So for the people that are unfamiliar with this, explain what it is and why it's so important.
Well, so this, there's actually a multitude of products that have just come on the market within the last several months, and we're actually still expecting at least like one or two more. So this is going to completely revolutionize the impact of RSV on us. What the FDA just approved is a vaccine for pregnant women. And so what we know about RSV in children and why this is, I can't tell you how exciting this is for us as pediatricians. This is just so exciting. Infants in their first 6 months of life are at highest risk for a bad outcome from RSV. But that's also a time when it's really hard to protect the infant. Like if we were to try to get the infant a vaccine at birth, it doesn't work very well. They don't have any natural protection. But what the study showed, so they gave the vaccine to pregnant women, and then they watched the kids after birth. And what they found is that the children who were born to moms who got vaccinated during pregnancy, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was huge, like 80% reduction in hospitalization, reduction in mortality, reduction in time on a ventilator, reduction in time on oxygen. It was just, it was phenomenal. And I think it's really hard to overemphasize the impact of this, because RSV, I don't want to be too dramatic, but for anybody who has done inpatient pediatrics or ICU pediatrics, RSV is traumatizing. Any pediatrician who has spent any time in the hospital can recognize the sound of a child with RSV. We know what it sounds like when they breathe, because they have so much trouble breathing. We recognize the sound of the cough. And then to just watch those babies just struggle to breathe night after night after night. It's for most of us who do inpatient pediatrics, it's some of our most formative experiences during our training, when we're doing those overnight shifts as residents, and we're just, you've got this 2-month-old, you've got this 6-week-old who's just on oxygen or on a ventilator, and you're just watching their poor little body just struggle to breathe. And there's nothing you can do. There's no treatment for RSV. There's no medication that you can give them to make this better. And to know that now we have this product that if the mom takes it when she's pregnant, you can almost, not quite, but almost eliminate that. That's going to empty out our hospitals in the winter. During RSV season, when it's fall and early winter, we could have dozens and dozens, of our beds, especially our ICU beds, can all be RSV. It could be the whole floor just full of RSV. This vaccine could effectively wipe out our inpatient population in the winter, which would just be fantastic. Keep all those kids at home, get them out of my hospital. I love it. It's so exciting. I'm thrilled.
A couple of things I want to hit on here. First is, you mentioned it toward the end there, winter. So is that typically when we see the increase in the RSV cases? Is that is that around flu season? Does that kind of line up?
A little bit before flu season. So the way it goes in pediatrics is school starts back and strep comes, which is what we're about to get ready for because school's starting. So we always see a spike in strep throat and strep related infections in September. Then right after that, we get croup. And then right after that, we get RSV. So around mid to late October is when we start. I mean, there can be a smattering of RSV cases in the early fall, but then as we get into October, RSV starts to go up, and then into November. And then what we see is RSV cases go up and peak, and then flu starts and RSV goes down, and then flu starts a little bit later, more towards like December.
And then you had mentioned, for this specific vaccine here, it's going to help from birth, or prevent RSV from birth to 6 months.
Yes.
How crucial is that time frame? Is that the most crucial time frame? I mean, how important is that 6 month period?
It is an extremely crucial time period for two reasons. One is based on the acute illness itself. So what RSV does is it causes a disease called bronchiolitis. Which is similar to bronchitis. So most adults know bronchitis. It's inflammation of the big tubes here in the top of your lungs. But what bronchiolitis is, those big bronchioles go down to littler and littler tubes until they get to the tiniest tubes called bronchioles. And those bronchioles are what actually lead to the air sacs that do the oxygen exchange with your blood. And those tiniest tubes called the bronchioles, that's where RSV attacks the lungs. And if you think about the size of my bronchioles or your bronchioles compared to the size of a 1 month-old's bronchioles, you can imagine inflaming that tiniest tube in a 1 month-old. And now you've got to try to get air past that to those air sacs to exchange, to get the oxygen exchange with the blood. And so preventing that infection and those early months when the lungs are still teeny tiny is key, because it can be so devastating to those very, very young kids. But there is a second reason why protection during the first 6 months is probably going to turn out. Now, this is going to be more long-term data. We don't know for sure. But one of the things we know about RSV infections in the first 6 months of life is there is a strong association with RSV and later developing asthma. And in particular, it's getting RSV in those early months. And part of the reason comes down to the immune response. So newborn babies do not have the same kind of immune response that you and I have. Very young children have what's known as a Th2 or anti-inflammatory immune response. And while that's the way nature created it, that's the way it is. It's not always the best immune response for certain virus or for certain types of infection. And in this case, the way the immune system responds to RSV in those early months when the baby is still in that Th2 response sets them up for future like allergies and asthma. And so if we can move that first RSV infection later, 2, 3, 4 years old, when they have bigger lungs, then they're less likely to have a bad reaction to it. And also at that point, their immune system will be fully developed and they'll have a normal Th1 immune response, and then presumably it wouldn't have as much of an effect on their later risk for asthma and allergies. However, I will say, in other exciting news, we are waiting to hear about an RSV vaccine for children that they can start getting at 6 months. So for our kids with heart defects, for our kids who do have severe asthma, for our kids with cystic fibrosis and other lung and heart issues, they can get that RSV vaccine to continue to protect them all throughout their childhood, probably once a year or once every other year. It's not clear yet what the dosing schedule for that's going to need to be. But I mean, it's just so exciting. I mean, this is a disease that we've been struggling with in pediatrics. Well, I mean, since the dawn of pediatrics. And early vaccine trials. It was actually one of the earliest viruses that we tried to make a vaccine way back in time when polio was effective, and everybody was like, great, we're going to eradicate diseases from the earth. They made a smallpox vaccine. they're like, let's make an RSV vaccine because RSV is so devastating. But it was very ineffective. And in fact, the early vaccines actually primed that Th2 response and made RSV worse. So those early vaccine trials actually caused more harm than good back in the 60s. And so the whole thing was scrapped. And it's taken decades and decades of research to sort out how to make a better vaccine. And in fact, it was the COVID vaccine. It was research done on the COVID vaccine, had to do with the way certain proteins on the surface are folded, kind of unlocked the mystery of how to make the RSV vaccine better. And here we are. We have an RSV vaccine for older adults because they also can have devastating illness with RSV, particularly those with like COPD, diabetes, kidney failure. So now there's an RSV vaccine for them. That was approved a couple of months ago. We have this RSV vaccine for pregnant women, and pretty soon we're going to have one for kids too. Plus, there are at least 2 RSV monoclonal antibodies that are supposed to be coming out very soon. And so, you put this entire package together, and really there should be nobody ever again to die from RSV. I mean, it's so exciting. It could make a huge difference in our pediatric population. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, so we could be just a few years away from RSV becoming quite taboo for a lot of people then.
Absolutely. I mean, we could be talking about RSV the same way we talk about whooping cough now. There's no need. I mean, once all these products are out, there is no need for anybody to have bad RSV ever again. Because these vaccines, the early studies, the published studies that we have now and the phase 3 studies all look phenomenal. The level of protection is very high. It's very clear in the adult population, at least for one of the vaccines, that it's probably even amenable to every other year dosing. So it may not even need to be every year dosing for some of the vaccines at least. And so it's really exciting.
So we're actually going to have to cut this now because our 7:30 newscast is starting in about 5 seconds. Of course, much more on this is available on our website at cleveland19.com. For now, I'm Jeff Slauson with 19 News. Have a great day and great night. Much more to come, both on air and online.
19 News, now streaming on Samsung Smart TV. Search for channel 1035.